This is Jack Donovan, author of The Way of Men, and you are listening to Start the World. You may have noticed the new Start the World theme song. It was composed and recorded for me by David Lee Archer. You can find more of Mr. Archer's song stylings on Reverb Nation. Just look for David Lee Archer and Luckless Bastards. He also has a page on Facebook. I am finally wrapping up the production of the audiobook edition of Becoming a Barbarian. A lot of people thought that the political bickering in this broken empire of nothing would die down after the elections were over. But that was never going to happen, no matter who won. People are making accusations and pushing their friends, relatives, co-workers, and vendors into corners. People feel forced to defend their positions. People are arguing with people who will never understand their perspectives because those people have completely opposing values. People who lived on college campuses or other protected bubbles of affirmation, I guess they're called safe spaces, had their bubbles burst when they suddenly realized that most Americans outside their progressive cities don't want or believe the same things. They are crying, hysterical, confused. They thought the media, which operated within the same urban bubbles, was giving them an accurate picture of the world. But the media was as blind or as willing to lie and distort information as they were. The spoiled, blind, and confused liars are lashing out at anyone who challenges their narrative, and polite people who mind their own business are being asked to take sides or backpedal or apologize for what they believe or how they voted. In this chapter, from Becoming a Barbarian, I deal with the subject of arguing and debate. Why argue? Who is worth arguing with? I think it's a timely preview of the audiobook, which I hope to have finished and available for purchase by the end of the month. The chapter is called No Apologies, No Arguments, and No Explanations. I narrate the chapter, but the titles and quotes were all performed by my buddy James Dorton, who sounds a lot like Christopher Lee in real life. It's actually pretty cool.
No apologies, no arguments, no explanations. Endeavor to not waste time in the company or trying to change the minds of those content with spinning their wheels and flapping their gums. Instead, use the time and energy to move further forward. The more you progress, the more they'll stew, and the more you learn, the less they'll do. Greg Walsh, wolfbrigade.com.
Why explain yourself to strangers, or worse, your enemies? Why try to convince them of anything? Why argue or debate with outsiders? What is to be gained from this kind of exchange? Offering an explanation for your words, thoughts, or actions to outsiders or enemies is defensive, or at best, strategically passive-aggressive. Explaining or defending your actions, thoughts, or words to your brothers or members of your tribe is a demonstration of loyalty and respect. If you have been accused of behaving badly, or in a manner inconsistent with your tribal culture, you explain and defend yourself because you want to remain a part of that tribe and maintain or regain the respect of your peers. This is an apologia in the original sense of the word. Apologia is a branch of Christian theology concerned with defending or explaining the faith to non-Christian critics, although other religions and philosophies have employed similar strategies when interacting with outsiders. Apologetics comes from the Latin apologeticus, which in turn comes from the Greek apologetikos. In the ancient Greek legal system, when charges were brought against you in court, you responded with an apologia, a formal apology or defense. If you have not been accused of any misdeed, but simply wish others in your tribe to consider a course of action at your recommendation, it is productive to defend and engage in debate concerning the merits of your idea. Likewise, if you object to a suggested course of action, you show a man respect by hearing his idea and attempting to convince him that he is mistaken. A man engages in apologetics or sincere debate intra-tribally because he cares. He cares about the direction of the tribe and the prosperity of his people. He argues because he cares about whether or not his tribe respects and values him. He argues to protect, defend, or increase his honor within the group. Men develop and establish formal rules and etiquette for argumentation and the resolution of disagreements to maintain civility and unity within a given tribe. Any group, from the smallest to the largest, will eventually have competing factions of men pressing different agendas and ideas. These factions argue because they care about the survival, prosperity, and culture of the group as a whole. Or, as is often the case, especially in larger political systems, the factions formally maintain the pretense of friendly argumentation while ruthlessly sabotaging each other. Competing political parties always argue from the starting assumption that what they want is best for the nation as a whole. They may despise their opponents more than foreign enemies, or they may be merely serving personal interests at the expense of any ideology at all. But to abandon the pretense that what they want is what is best for the country would be completely taboo, because it would undermine the overarching identity of the tribe or expose them as corrupt and self-interested charlatans. Men argue, debate, and explain their positions intertribally within a conceptual framework that presupposes tribal unity, mutual respect, shared identity, and wanting what is best for the tribe as a whole. This manner of debate and argumentation is the habit, or at least the acknowledged ideal, of most Western men. It has a long tradition in the West, reaching back to the classical era, and it is the style of argumentation we have all been taught and which is expected of us in any forum. It works, and the conventions of Western argumentation are productive, within a unified group or tribe. Like most Western conventions that survived because they were highly functional for smaller groups of men, civilized debate and argumentation leads to impotence, corruption, and indecision when applied universally. It remains useful in the hard sciences, where proofs can be offered and examined objectively by anyone with the intelligence to comprehend and process the evidence and arguments being presented. However, Western-style debate and argumentation becomes wasteful and even harmful when its basic assumption that everyone involved shares an identity, a common culture, and ultimately wants what is best for the group is untrue. Politics becomes even more of a magnet for self-aggrandizing sociopaths and liars than it already tends to be by nature, and men with no meaningful political power or authority waste their time and energy trying to convince complete strangers to convert to their way of thinking, even when those strangers have completely different group identities, different religious beliefs, and completely incompatible or opposing ideas about what is good or best in life. The Universalist man, as an egalitarian citizen of the empire and member of the one true human tribe, has accepted the responsibility of somehow convincing an infinite amount of people that his actions are in the interest of everyone, everywhere, and that he wants what is best for everyone, everywhere, even if they are openly hostile to him and do not consider themselves part of his one true tribe. This cannot even be described as a Sisyphean task, because it is non-linear. Universalist man doesn't have to push a single boulder up a single hill. He has charged himself with pushing a functionally infinite number of boulders up an infinite number of hills. He has essentially made himself responsible for and accountable to every single living human. And some have gone so far as to claim responsibility for the welfare and happiness of animals, plants, and the entire earth as well. The Universalist man accepts responsibilities that could only be fulfilled by an omniscient God. As such, he is both obnoxious and a failure. This implied responsibility for a man to consider everyone everywhere's opinion and to bring everyone everywhere around to his opinion is illustrated millions of times every day all over the internet and social media. Men engage in pointless and never-ending arguments with complete strangers who are often anonymous and questionably sincere, as if they were brothers, friends, or next-door neighbors. By involving himself in arguments with strangers, a man opens himself up to an infinite number of challenges from other men or women who then feel as entitled to a response as a tribal brother, friend, or peer would rightfully feel entitled to a response. Many young men who have grown up on the internet see these debates as a cathartic game of one-upmanship and troll discussions purely for the satisfaction of catching someone in a confused or emotional response. Like hackers, they often like to pretend that they are providing some kind of service. But this is rationalization, as they generally troll out of boredom, not selfless nobility. So, by engaging in these sorts of arguments, a man not only opens himself up to sincere challenges from strangers, outsiders, and others with completely different interests and values, he opens himself up to insincere attacks, motivated merely by the boredom of hecklers. Video games and vicarious obsessions like spectator sports and pornography are frequently blamed for diverting the attentions and energies of men away from meaningful first-person pursuits and live action in meat space. But these online debates with strangers may waste just as much of the time and effort of able-bodied, intelligent, and talented men. Debate for the sake of debate is an intellectualized form of masculine competition in a world badly in need of visceral, direct masculinity. The universalist man must argue with and defend his ideas and actions to everyone everywhere because he accepts everyone everywhere as part of his tribe. He considers it barbaric to disregard the opinions or interests of anyone, anywhere. The barbarian refuses to accept everyone everywhere as a member of his tribe. Because he is not blinded by the doctrine of infinite inclusiveness, he recognizes that others have interests and values that are irreconcilable with his own. He is beholden to a limited number of people, to us, and owes no explanation or justification to them. Contemplate the absurdity of a Viking explaining to monks why he is right to attack their monastery, or Attila justifying his attacks on the Roman Empire to anyone but the Huns. Power makes its own argument. Explanations and apologies to outsiders are the issue of flaccid, failing, and feminine cultures. There are, of course, exceptions. There are tactical reasons for explanations, arguments, and apologies. If you are part of a minority group, for instance, you may want to engage in some sort of strategic apologetics. Various religions, including Christianity, have developed apologetics to make their presence seem tolerable to outsiders in areas where they were a minority influence. Jews argue from the perspective of being part of a larger community, even when they ultimately see themselves as being distinct and separate from that community. Muslims manipulate Western moderates by appealing for tolerance and understanding in public forums, even as they preach intolerance in their mosques. This approach exploits the cultural weakness of the dominant culture in a region to create space for the expansion and empowerment of the minority culture. Tactical explanations, arguments, and apologies may be duplicitous or riddled with half-truths because truth is owed only internally. Tactical explanations, arguments, and apologies are tools designed to accomplish a purpose. There is some danger, though, in the potential for the tactical rationale offered to outsiders to infect the culture of insiders and muddle their perception of themselves. In trying to convince others that they are harmless and should be left alone so that members aren't harassed or persecuted, many groups actually become harmless and indistinguishable from dominant cultures in terms of their everyday beliefs. This is true of the majority of alternative religious groups today. Another reason to engage in apologetics is to facilitate conversion. The evangelical universalist must theoretically be willing to share the good word with everyone everywhere. But the tribalist only seeks to convert or recruit desirable individuals, those whose conversion or recruitment would ultimately benefit the tribe or group in some way. The tribalist should be able to address the concerns of those interested in recruitment or conversion and be able to distinguish what we believe or how we live from what they believe and how they live. Along similar lines, a tribalist might develop an explanation or argument for his tribal culture to act as a beacon, to attract the right kind of people. This is one reason a man might write a book, for instance. Beyond this strategic kind of apologetics, there are few reasons to engage tribal outsiders or ideological opponents in debate or attempt to convince them of anything. If you are motivated by some hope that things would be better if everyone everywhere would just agree to alter their thoughts or actions in a particular way, you are already and will always be wrong. People will always have different interests and agendas, and arguing as if you could conceivably convince everyone of everything is a masturbatory exercise. Argumentation is wasted on enemies and strangers. Arguing is something you should do with people who you know and respect, because you want what is best for them and for you, and because their opinion matters to you. Argue within your circle. Fuck everyone else.